pale.
I know. You need to get a filter.
Hey, what are we
All
talking
right.
about this morning?
Alrighty. Well, let me get the snapper in. Action. Good morning, everyone.
Yes.
Welcome to Morning Minutes with myself, Michael Bergio, and co-host Mark Novak. And this morning, we're going to be talking about city agent v local agent. What does it even mean? What is a city agent, and what is the perception real, or the thoughts? When do we see it used? And just sort of, I find it just comes up a lot in conversation. Should I get a city agent v local? G'day, Michael Edwards. Thanks for watching. I only felt like I just saw you. Mark, so what's a city agent? What are people referring to? Are they talking about their postal address, where their office is, brings in buyers, or are they talking about the reach? Like, what is it?
I guess you could liken it to like the JLL, the CBRE, the Collier's agents that are in the big smoke. You know, like they're in the CBD, Sydney. Hence my background on Facebook. People are often comparing us because we're a strongly local Northern Beaches brand. We're obviously a family-owned business, and people are going, well, you know, how do you compare to the national networks if we're going to select you to sell from? Now, I never before we talk about it, I never get asked by a buyer ever. It's only ever sellers.
Yes. And that would be the common thing, which I think a lot of people can relate to. G'day, Jeff, Andrew, Luke, pumping morning. Good to have you all on.
Hey, guys.
I think, like a lot of agents out there, I think it doesn't matter if you're Northern Beaches or you're in other pockets. I think this is a common thing sellers bring up, going, well, if I'm going to list with you, why should I list with you where you only have really your local network via international? So I would, from my point of view, when people are saying national, they it's probably the perception they believe, because you always hear a lot of Asian money basically coming overseas, coming and buying properties. So I think sellers are trying to, when they mean that, that's what they're looking to try and tap into, this magical pool of overseas buyers. Would that be your assumption, Mark? Or like that's where they feel these companies, because they are like a JLL, CBRE, they're in multiple countries. So I can see where they're sort of coming from. If they get offices in Sydney and say Hong Kong, that they could be quite interrelated. Is that what they're searching for? Is that sort of feel?
Yeah, look, I think it's quite clever, because it can't be quantified, it can't be substantiated. It's perceived value. So when I guess what's really interesting is when you're selling a product as a salesperson, if you can sell air or perceived value, then that's enough to raise a shadow of doubt for a client, then you've actually got something to separate yourself from the marketplace. Now, whether that's value or not value, I think we'll go into later with some comparisons, Michael, that we're pretty proud of. But that perceived value, I think, is really they really drill into the brain of prospective sellers to go, well, we've got this Asian network. Well, we've got this international network. So it's pretty, I guess, in a environment at the moment, particularly in the last quarter, where we are supporting Australian and where we are supporting local, I think it's even more important to support a domestic brand and a local brand like us than an international brand where the money's taken offshore.
And just off what you said there, Mark, that perceived, to put in a bit of context for someone out there, it would be, let's say I work for, say, CBRE, for example. How I would use that perceived value would be you're sitting with the people who are selling, and you sort of just playing the tune of, we've got these offices in America, Sweden, Hong Kong. We talk all the time. There's thousands of buyers overseas that only we have access to. They pay huge money. You need this. that's why you're going with us. No other local agent can provide these buyers. Basically, that's the pitch. Would you agree? Is that what you, Mark?
Well, that's it.
That's
I
the
guess
pitch.
for anyone who's just tuned in, what we're talking about is the difference between a local brand and an international brand when it comes to commercial, particularly. And we're talking about when people are selecting to rent their property or selecting to sell their property, the pros and cons. We're probably as biased as hell, but we're going to try not to be.
Oh yeah, of course. But we'll put it in a bit of context as well. And if you're other, I know a lot of agents here are tuning in. Maybe, hopefully, there's something here some tools we've used to help secure the business as the local agent. But also, I genuinely believe that the local agent is the better choice to represent your property, and we'll go through those examples there. So for me, it's more overcoming. G'day, Lisa, good to see you tuning in. It's not just obviously to secure the business, but it's in their best interest as the vendors when they're selling, because we've just seen it come out better. And let's put it, what that perception of those buyers overseas, the power of a local agent, as Michael Edwards says, knowledge is power. I feel when people are looking to buy property, they're more interested in if that agent can supply the data of what's selling in the area, the trends in the local market. We all know there's markets within markets. Like we all know in our suburbs where if you're on the eastern side of Pittwater Road, you're 5% better in price than on the western side, and things like, there's always these little trends and things in the market where an agent who's not from that local area just won't know. And that's what I find a lot of buyers find more powerful. As you said, Mark, buyers, they don't really care. Like, I just see that's where the gap is from a city agent. They may introduce a couple buyers from overseas, but keep in mind, those buyers overseas still have access to the largest portals to buy property. So they're there.
They do. And I've got to tell you, like, Northern Beaches covers Spitbridge all the way up to Palm Beach. We are, like, if you looked at all of the sales that have been done in any of our core suburbs with a Novak and without Novak, because you sort of know who bought, what bought, where they're from and stuff like that. It's very, very, very domestic. It's very Sydney based. It's very Northern Beaches based. There's a statistic that came out from News Limited, which was 85-90% of people are coming within a 10-kilometre range when they buy real estate. So it's local, super important. And you know what else, Michael? When I want to consume something, when I want to consume a product.
Yep. Sorry.
Jesus, who's that? When I want to consume a product, I want knowledge. So if I'm going to walk into a car dealership, if I'm going to go and buy a television, I want to know all about the television or all about the car. Do you know what I mean? That local knowledge that you're referring to, I think is absolutely critical when you're banging out 500,000 or $1 million or 2 million. Do you know what I mean? You want to know everything about that area.
100%. And I think that's where, and I reckon it would go, Luke, Jeff, would love your feedback. Like, Jeff, where do you see a lot of your buyers coming from? Would you say 90% of the buyers or 100 or 50% of the buyers that your office is dealing with, would you say they live within a 10-kilometre radius? Because as Mark said, that's what is on the Northern Beaches. So when clients come to us looking to sell and they sort of throw out that city agent v local, nearly all the transactions are done to local buyers, and they feel a lot more trusted when there's a local agent who knows the local dealings and what's selling and leasing for as well. Like a big part in commercial property is the rents and that value of the rent of the tenancy. And even if you're coming from outside to sell the property, you can probably find out what's sold within the radius to use as comparables. But the most powerful thing is being able to say that's the rent of the property and that's what the last 10 properties around it have leased for. Like that data is you just can't really get that. It's not, especially
All
commercial
right.
where it's not as up to date as resi, where there's
Absolutely.
everything displayed.
So give me some examples. So I think across the road from our office was a phenomenal example. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so we brought on two new buildings, 200 units, 130, 70 in one, and then they had 12 retail shops. We had done a lot of, the client basically wanted a national agent on it because of all the overseas buyers, just had that real perception and the big brand. But he also knew we did 80% of the deals in that suburb. So we did a conjunction. We touched on that structure yesterday in our minutes, the types of sale. So, we did that.
Just to explain what that is, they wanted to award it, but with it, so they wanted to give the agreement to sell the property and the tools to sell the properties to two different agents. So we had the same tools, yeah. We had the same we had the same benefit of real estate, real commercial. We had the same benefit of real commercial. We had the same benefit of portals, social media, and database. And one was an international agent, which the perceived value to the seller was real, and that's why they wanted to use them. But then the perceived value to the seller with us was also very real and very apparent because they knew we were doing majority of the deals in the Northern Beaches in sales.
Yes. And we ended up selling, well, now we've sold, I think it was 14 shops, but we've sold 13. 13 out of 14 local agent v city agent.
But the 14th one was our buyer anyway.
Yeah, and that was a cross one. So we had dealings with that. So why we're bringing this up is, one, to give ourselves a pat on the back, but two, it was a strong learning to actually see it live and be in it, in that context. Because a lot of the time it's city v local and they give it to one agent. You really don't get to know if what would have done better. You know, Mark, like you just see it listed with one and it's sold and you're like, oh, what if? So to be head to head and with the same tools and just dominate with that. And the reason I know we sold it.
Also, like, I guess you question yourself as well, Michael. Like,
yeah,
you know, anytime you go into battle, whether it's in a boxing ring or whether it's in a debate or whatever that's going to be, a tennis game as a professional, Novak Djokovic, giddy up. You know, I think you always back yourself, confidence with yourself, but you know you got a competitor. So you always want to make sure. So it was for us. It was. Yeah, we we're really guarded and really on point.
And now, why I was able to sell them was that there was so much information buyers needed to reassure themselves it was a good investment to buy, and it really had very little to do with the property. It had everything to do with what rent you could get, who would rent it, and having enough information to support that. Now, especially with commercial property, there's very little data. But the most powerful thing, like there are a lot of them, most people who buy commercial are investors, in my view, like 80% are probably investors, they own occupier. Therefore, it's an empty shell. There's not much to look at with the property. They just want to know who would rent it. And by being local, I could be like, well, I just leased these 3 shops. He's moving out. They need a new property. And simultaneously, you're showing the asset for rent as well, gives the buyer confidence. And because that buyer knew we're there, we're not just talking shit to get the deal because we're in this marketplace. They take it a lot more trustworthy. One, you've done deals in the past, so you've got that sort of authority check box. 2, you're not going to be selling it and never seeing it again. You're there, so they just feel like it's very honest and transparent. But most importantly, we've got the people to go into the property because it's our local market. I know who needs to extend their bakery. I know who's an accountant moving. It's just we offered that, and that's what the buyers needed to tick it across, which is hard to quantify.
Absolutely. And Michael, I think as a seller, they had a really nice insurance policy that they covered local, and as a seller, they had a really nice insurance policy that they covered international. But on the flip side, I think you could say that they also wasted some of their time and some of their money to sell up. And because to have two agents reporting to you as regular as we do, to have two agents spending your marketing money, like all their advertising bills were effectively double because they had to, whatever they did for those guys had to do for us.
Yeah.
And not only that, the signal that went out to the buyers, well, I guess you can say because we did the 99% share of sales, I guess you could say that we were quite effective in our selling, or the most effective in our selling processes. Now, the buyers that they were coming across were not dealing with the most effective agent. So if we took 150 inquiries and they took 150 inquiries or 50 or 100 or whatever they took, they were not dealt with as effective as we dealt with them because we were the closers. The local agent were the closers. So I could.
Well, not even just closer. We were the fountain of knowledge, sort of thing. And that equaled the close. Like there was 100 buyers or whatever their scenario was. There's half your buyers, which you pay good money for marketing, just not getting the information needed to close the deal.
Big time. So the message today, guys, is particularly with commercial properties, if you can choose international, you can choose local, go with the strong local. And it may even extend across to franchising and independent agencies. Probably another session to talk about, but we've seen a massive move in Australia, a huge move in Australia where agencies are moving away from national brands, brands like Hookers, Ray White's, McGrath's, Rain and Horns. They've moved away from their international brands. And, again, when I talk about perceived value, these operators that have moved away were beating the drum of how good's our franchise. We get agents from local networks, and then 3 months later, we get buyers from all over Australia, and then 3 months later, they've opened up their own brand. So it's pretty interesting that there's a movement away from the national. There's a huge movement away from international and national franchising.
Well, you know what, Mark? I find it ironic. Like people, they build when we know there's two franchise groups, let's just say Manly and DY, and they don't even communicate. I don't see how a franchise group will communicate from Sydney to Hong Kong. Like it's quite intriguing, that perception v reality. Even another one with internal splits for sales agents where, Mark, we had in a presentation the other day where the way we run is virtually like an open listing once you've engaged Novak. So it's almost like a 50-50 split where you're not getting one agent, you're getting every agent can sell each other's stock. So it's a really, really good competitive environment. All buyers can see everything. And where I bring that in, because some other agencies, franchise say they do that, but it's only like a 10% referral. Now, the money doesn't match the motivation to show each other's property, so it doesn't really happen. So there's that perceived fee reality is a big one with the
There's no real
agents.
team.
Okay,
they're independent operators. There's no real team working for you. And not only that, you're paying 10 or 20% or more to the franchise for I don't think much. So I think as a consumer of real estate services, whether it's property management or sales, I think people
I'm just losing a bit of audio.
Because it's costing more or they're getting less because of the franchise thing. I think we'll finish it up there, hey?
You've just cut out, Mark.
Yeah, I've lost you on Insta, girlfriend.
Mark, you there? Can you hear me? I've lost Mark, guys, so I'm just giving...
All good, guys. Okay, I can't hear. Oh, I got your back. All right, mate. Well, I think that's a take. Have a great day, everyone. That's the difference between national commercial agents and local commercial agents from our perspective. I'd be interested if there was any major international commercial agent that wanted to give their perspective. Happy to have them online as well.
Yeah, happy to see their feedback, how they use it as well. Happy to join in. But this will be there's a link to our podcast with over 100 episodes, lots of knowledge there. Feel free to tune in, listen to it. We'll YouTube this content as well, and we'll be back tomorrow morning for another topic. Once again, guys, if there's anything you want us to talk about, let it DM us. We're happy to. If you see an article and you say, I'd like to know more about that, flick it to the article. We'll review it and give you our take on it. We're here. Love that you guys tune in all the time. All good.
Done.
Thanks, guys.
Take care, everyone.
Bye.
See ya. Bye.
Bye.